Yeah, it was quite a night. 16 hours of negotiations that ended at 3 o'clock this morning. Really, it's optically a bad result for the EU. It looks bad, but if you look at the details, this is a pretty good result for the EU and for Ukraine. It looks bad because the EU said it was going to do something and then didn't do it. It said it was going to use the Russian frozen assets to give to Ukraine, but in the end, because most of those frozen assets are based here in Belgium, the Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever was too worried about a successful Russian legal challenge, leaving Belgian taxpayers on the hook for it. They couldn't convince him of any kind of mechanism to make sure the risk of that was spread out to all of the EU. And so in the end, they had to abandon that plan A during the night, and they went to plan B, which is the so-called Eurobonds for Ukraine. That's collective debt backed by all of the EU countries using the EU budget to fund Ukraine. And this is in terms of loans that would be repaid by eventual Russian reparations, either direct reparations or, in that future event, then confiscating the Russian assets and giving them to Ukraine. The weird thing is, as late as Wednesday night, we journalists in Brussels were being told that this Plan B was a complete non-starter because that would need unanimity, unlike the frozen Russian assets, and you had two blocks there. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz using the typical German objection to collectivizing EU debt, just in principle, and then also Viktor Orban, who vetoes anything related to Ukraine because he says that continuing to aid Ukraine unnecessarily prolongs the war and would interfere with the U.S. peace efforts. The frozen assets wouldn't have needed unanimity, that's why they were pursuing it. Then, surprise, surprise, overnight, both Chancellor Merz and Prime Minister Orban caved. We don't really know why, but Viktor Orban was able to get an exemption to being part of that collectivized EU debt for both himself and his two fellow Russian ally prime ministers. That's Andris Babiš in Czechia and Robert Fico in Slovakia. Those three countries will not be participating in this. The truth is, though, we always knew that if they ever were able to use that Plan B, of course Hungary would not be contributing to it. So it's really not clear what got Viktor Orban over the line last night after he went into that summit saying under no circumstances would he allow this EU money to go to Ukraine. He would veto it, not to protect Hungarian taxpayers, but on principle, because he thought that that would prolong the war. So a very surprise result late last night. In the end, though, this could actually end up being better for Ukraine because this money, yeah, it's less than the 210 billion. This is 90 billion. But in the short and medium term, it's really the same because that 210 billion was going to be staggered over time. The money comes faster. There's a possibility to get new money from further budgetary allotments, and it's more secure. It's not subject to legal challenge. So overall, after the dust settled this morning and after they kind of got over the embarrassment of not delivering what they said they were going to deliver, when you look at the figures, this is actually a pretty good result for Ukraine. And they avoided the worst case scenario, which was leaving last night with no money.
I completely hear what you're saying, Dave, but just spell it out for us. Is this better or worse than using those seized Russian billions?
I mean, it's not as much money. That's the main problem. And it's also a pretty clear signal that the EU is never going to give that money to Ukraine, because if they can't agree on that now, why would they be able to agree on it in the future? So some people are saying, yeah, but we can always use it later, the frozen Russian assets. I'm not sure why later would work when now didn't work. They offered everything they possibly could to the Belgian Prime Minister. So I think on the negative side, again, optically, it shows a divided EU. Friedrich Merz went into the summit saying that they had to do this frozen assets thing, otherwise it would endanger Ukraine. Now he's saying, oh no, the result we ended up with is good. It's not really clear why it was such a catastrophe before, and now he's okay with it. So it's a bad look. It makes the EU look disunified and unable to agree things. But in the end, in the medium term, it will be essentially the same amount of money, and it'll be more secure.
The other big issue, of course, on the agenda with you has been the EU-Mercosur trade deal. Great controversy, farmers in France and Italy against it. Macron, Meloni leading their cause. Meloni's call with Lula da Silva resulting in the delay. Bring us up to date as to where we are right now with this trade deal.
Yeah, this is a huge controversy, and actually we're told 10,000 farmers converged here in Brussels, all on the streets around me here, bringing these huge tractors that brought traffic to a standstill on Thursday, yesterday, trying to interrupt this summit. The Mercosur deal wasn't on the agenda, but it was going on in the background because Ursula von der Leyen was supposed to fly to Brazil tomorrow for a signing ceremony. There was supposed to be a vote on this by EU governments today. That was canceled because Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni came out against it, saying we need more time, that she couldn't give her green light to this. Now, France is against this, Poland is against this, Austria, Hungary, Ireland, Netherlands on the fence. Together, they can't defeat this. It's a qualified majority issue. Italy was really the key country here. As soon as Meloni said this week, no, we can't sign off on this year, we knew it was dead. For now, the big question is, does it come back in January? Brazil is getting very, very impatient, and President Lula has threatened to pull the plug on this entirely. So I think that if this happens, it's going to have to happen very early in January. I just heard that the Commission has tentatively scheduled a signing ceremony in Paraguay that Ursula von der Leyen will fly over for. That doesn't really say anything about whether it's actually going to happen, but I think they're trying to put pressure on Rome to say, okay, you need to make up your mind about this very quickly. In the end, President Macron, entering the summit yesterday, was railing against Mercosur, talking about how horrible it is, but he didn't say that he'll definitely vote against it. So he did open the possibility that in the end France could vote for this. Domestically, politically, I'm not sure why he'd want to do that, but we'll see. It's not dead yet, but it's really, really hanging by a thread, I would say.
Dave Keating, as always, thank you very much indeed. Dave Keating, our correspondent in